The dust from the realtor's car was still settling on my new driveway when I saw them coming. 3 vehicles packed with faces I hadn't seen in a decade, crawling up the dirt road toward my farm. My farm. The words still felt strange in my mouth, like a candy I wasn't sure I liked yet. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name's Harold Mitchell. Most folks just call me Hal. I'm 72 years old, though my back feels about 90 some mornings. Retired now, after 43 years working for the electric company. Started as a lineman climbing poles in the snow, ended as a regional manager with a corner office. Not bad for a farm boy who barely finished high school. These days I live alone in a small house outside Millerville. Or I did, until yesterday when I signed the papers on 86 acres of good Kentucky soil with a weathered farmhouse that needs more work than my knees are happy about. But it's mine. Every creaking floorboard, every acre of overgrown pasture, every rusted hinge on the barn door, all mine. I wake up at 5:30 every morning, same as I did when I was working. Old habits. Make my coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in it. Read the newspaper, the actual paper, not that internet nonsense. Take my pills. Check the weather. Plan my day. It's a simple life, but it suits me. 10 years is a long time to go without hearing your daughter's voice, or seeing your grandkids grow. Emma would be 21 now. Little Jack must be 17. I still have their school pictures from 4th and 1st grade, stuck to my refrigerator with magnets from places I've never been. I remember the day Sarah, that's my daughter, told me she was moving to California with that husband of hers, Tom something. Never could remember his last name, even when I was trying. "It's a great opportunity, Dad," she said, eyes bright with a future I couldn't see. "Tom's firm is transferring him to the San Francisco office. We'll send for the rest of our things once we're settled." I helped them load the moving truck. Carried boxes labeled kitchen and kids' toys and Sarah's books. Lifted furniture I'd bought them as wedding presents. Dismantled the crib where my grandchildren had slept when they visited. All while Tom checked his watch and made phone calls about California connections and networking opportunities. The last box I carried was heavy. Photo albums and Sarah's high school yearbooks. Things she couldn't bear to leave behind, but would probably never look at again. "We'll call as soon as we get there," Sarah promised, hugging me tight in my driveway. Her perfume smelled like her mother's, lilacs and something else I could never name. "And we'll fly you out for Christmas." I believed her. That's the funny thing about family. You keep believing them long after evidence suggests you shouldn't. The first Christmas came and went. "The move was more expensive than we thought," she explained over the phone. "Next year for sure." Next year turned into the year after. Phone calls went from weekly to monthly to holidays only. Then, after a disagreement about money, Tom had called asking for a loan to invest in some startup company. The calls stopped completely. I tried at first. Left voicemails that went unreturned. Sent birthday cards with checks that were cashed but never acknowledged. Emailed photos of the garden I was growing. The flowers Margaret would have loved. My late wife had always kept flowers around the house, even in winter. After 3 years of reaching into silence, I stopped trying. I put my energy into my job instead. Took on extra projects, mentored younger employees, volunteered for weekend shifts. When I retired at 68, they gave me a gold watch and a plaque that called me dedicated. Dedicated. Funny word for a man whose family had forgotten him existed. Retirement hit me harder than I expected. Suddenly the silence in my house had weight. It pressed against my chest when I woke in the morning and sat beside me on the couch at night. I tried the senior center, joined a bowling league, even dated a nice widow named Elaine for a while, but nothing filled the empty space where my family should have been. Then 6 months ago, Margaret's sister Judy died. The funeral was small, just me and a handful of people from her church. Afterward, going through her things, I found a shoebox filled with letters Margaret had written to her over the years. Reading my wife's handwriting again after 13 years without her nearly broke me. But one letter in particular caught my attention. "Hal's talking about buying a farm when he retires," she'd written. "Just a small place where he can grow vegetables and maybe keep a few chickens. He says he wants to go back to his roots before he's too old to enjoy it. I think it would be good for him." That letter was dated a month before the cancer diagnosis that would take her within a year. She'd never mentioned the farm to me. Maybe she'd been saving it as a surprise, Or maybe she knew me better than I knew myself. The next morning I called a realtor. It took months of searching before I found the right place. Most were too big, too expensive, too rundown, or too far from town. But the moment I saw the old Jenkins place with its white farmhouse and red barn, I knew. It wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a kitchen with appliances older than some of my co-workers. But the land was good, with a creek running along the back property line and enough flat ground for a serious garden. "Are you sure you want to take this on at your age?" the realtor asked when I made an offer. She was young, probably Sarah's age, with a genuine concern in her eyes that made me forgive the implied insult. "I grew up on a farm twice this size," I told her, "and I'm not planning to raise cattle or plant corn. Just want a place to grow tomatoes that actually taste like tomatoes." The paperwork took forever, the way these things do now. Background checks and credit reports and insurance requirements. But yesterday I finally signed the last document and received the keys to my farm. I spent that first night in a sleeping bag on the living room floor, too tired from moving boxes to set up my bed, but too excited to drive back to my rental in town. I fell asleep planning where I'd plant potatoes and which wall needed painting first. This morning, I was up with the sun, making coffee on a camp stove and sitting on the porch steps to watch mist rise from the fields. The world was quiet except for birdsong and the occasional lowing of cows from the neighboring property. That's when I saw the dust cloud coming up the long driveway. At first, I thought it was the realtor, coming to check that I hadn't changed my mind overnight. Then I recognized the lead car, a silver SUV I'd seen in Facebook photos Judy used to show me. Sarah's car. Behind it came a red sports car that could only belong to Tom, and behind that a blue sedan I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. 10 years without a word, and now they were here, all of them, rolling up to my new beginning like they had a right to be part of it. I set my coffee cup down on the step and stood up, my knees protesting the sudden movement. Through the windshield of the SUV, I could see Sarah's face, older than in my memories but still unmistakably my daughter. In the passenger seat, a young woman with long dark hair, Emma, all grown up. My granddaughter, a stranger. The cars stopped in a row, engines cutting off in sequence. For a moment nobody moved. We just looked at each other through glass and morning light, separated by more than just car windows. Then Sarah's door opened and she stepped out. She was wearing expensive-looking sunglasses and clothes too fancy for a Kentucky farm. Her hair was shorter, styled in a way Margaret would have called sophisticated. "Dad," she said, and her voice hadn't changed at all. It still had that slight catch, the one that appeared whenever she was nervous. "We heard you bought a farm. I wanted to ask how they'd heard. Wanted to know why now, after 10 years, they'd suddenly found their way back to me. Wanted to demand where they'd been when I was sitting alone in hospital waiting rooms during my knee surgery, or when I retired, or on all those birthdays and Christmases. Instead, I just nodded. "Yesterday," I said. "Just got the keys." The passenger door of Sarah's car opened and Emma stepped out. She was beautiful, tall and slender like Margaret had been, with the same graceful way of moving. She didn't approach, just stood beside the car watching me like I was some specimen in a zoo exhibit. The doors of the other cars opened too. Tom emerged from the sports car, older and heavier but still with that salesman's smile. From the blue sedan came a young man I barely recognized, Jack, now a teenager with his father's build and his mother's eyes. And behind him, a woman I'd never seen before, probably in her 60s, expensively dressed and surveying my farm with obvious distaste. "This is Catherine," Tom said, gesturing to the woman. "My mother. She's been living with us for the past few years." I nodded a greeting, wondering why Tom's mother warranted an introduction when my own grandchildren stood silent and unacknowledged. "We were surprised to hear about the farm," Sarah said, taking off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. "Aunt Judy's friend Martha called to tell me." Martha, the church lady who'd helped organize Judy's funeral. I remembered mentioning my plans to her, never imagining she kept in touch with the niece who hadn't even attended her aunt's funeral. "It's not much," I said, gesturing to the weathered house and overgrown fields, "but it's mine." "That's actually what we wanted to talk to you about." Tom stepped forward, all business. "We've had some financial setbacks recently." And there it was. 10 years of silence. broken not by love or regret or a desire for reconciliation, but by need. Financial need. I should have known. Tom's company downsized, Sarah explained quickly. And with the housing market in San Francisco being what it is, we've had to make some difficult decisions. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Behind the expensive clothes and styled hair, I could see strain. Dark circles under her eyes, new lines around her mouth. Whatever had brought them here wasn't fabricated. We thought, Tom continued, with you buying this place, you might be in a position to help. Family helping family. Family. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with all the years it had been forgotten. Emma shifted uncomfortably beside the car. Jack stared at his shoes. Catherine, Tom's mother, examined her manicured nails with studied indifference. Only Sarah met my eyes, and in hers I saw something that might have been shame. I'd imagined our reunion 1,000 times over the years. In my daydreams there were tearful apologies, warm embraces, explanations that somehow made the decade of silence understandable, if not excusable. Never had I imagined this, my family appearing at my door with hands outstretched, not for reconciliation but for money. The farm needs work, I said finally. I could use some help with that. A flicker of surprise crossed Tom's face. He'd expected a different response. Maybe anger, maybe immediate agreement. Not this quiet condition. We're not really farm people, he said carefully. Neither was I for 43 years. But here I am. I gestured to the property around us. There's a lot to do. Fences to mend, rooms to paint, a garden to plant. If family's going to help family seems fair, it should go both ways. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Dad, we didn't come all this way just to ask for money and leave, didn't you? The question hung between us, honest and painful. Tom looked away. Catherine huffed impatiently. But Sarah, my Sarah, flinched as if I'd slapped her. We've made mistakes, she said quietly. I've made mistakes, but we're still family. Behind her, Emma took a hesitant step forward. Grandpa, she said, and hearing that word from her adult lips nearly undid me. I'd like to help. With the farm, I mean. I don't know much about farming, but I can paint and stuff. Jack nodded beside her. Me too. I'm stronger than I look. I looked at my grandchildren, these grown strangers who carried my blood, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But possibility. There's coffee inside, I said. It's not good coffee, but it's hot. We can talk about what needs doing while we drink it. Sarah took a step toward the house, then hesitated. Are we okay, Dad? I considered the question, looking at the family that had abandoned me and now stood on my land asking for help. Were we okay? No, not by a long shot. But maybe we could be someday. We're family, I said finally. For better or worse. Now come inside before the coffee gets cold. They followed me up the porch steps, a procession of prodigals returning not out of love, but necessity. Only time would tell if that was enough to rebuild what 10 years of silence had destroyed. As I held the door open for them, I caught sight of a cardinal landing on the fence post by the barn, bright red against weathered wood. Margaret had always said cardinals were visitors from heaven. I wondered what she would make of this unexpected reunion. I guess we were about to find out. The kitchen was just as I'd described it. Old appliances, worn countertops, and a coffee pot that looked like it had survived the Nixon administration. My family filed in behind me, their designer clothes and clean fingernails looking out of place against the farmhouse's weathered interior. Sorry about the mess, I said, though I wasn't sorry at all. Just moved in yesterday. Tom glanced around, his mouth tight with what might have been disappointment. This is rustic. It's a farm, Tom, not a San Francisco condo. Emma touched the worn wooden table with something like wonder. It reminds me of Grandma's house, the one in the photos. I nodded, surprised she remembered. Margaret would have loved this place. Sarah busied herself finding mugs in the boxes I'd stacked on the counter. Her hands shook slightly. How much did you pay for it? There it was. The real question. Not how are you, Dad? Or what are your plans for the place? But how much? Enough, I said, filling the coffee pot with water. Got a fair price, Tom cleared his throat. What Harold means is that... Hal, I corrected. Nobody calls me Harold except telemarketers and the IRS. Right, Hal, Tom continued, not missing a beat. What I'm sure Hal means is that property values in this area are quite reasonable compared to California standards. Catherine, Tom's mother, made a small noise of disgust. Everything is reasonable compared to California. This place looks like something from a Depression-era photograph. I turned to face her directly. Ma'am, if you don't like my home, the driveway points the same direction it did when you arrived. That shut her up. Jack snorted with what sounded like appreciation, earning a sharp look from his father. Sarah found 5 mugs and set them on the counter. Dad, nobody's criticizing your house. It's charming. We're just surprised. Surprised I could afford it, you mean? That's not what I meant, but it was. I could see it in her eyes. The same calculation that had been there when she'd called asking for money for Emma's college fund 5 years ago, the last time we'd spoken before today. Back then, I'd sent a check for $10,000, money I'd been saving for a new truck. Never got a thank you note. Never heard if Emma even went to college. I poured coffee into the mismatched mugs. No cream, no sugar. I hadn't expected company. So, I said, leaning against the counter, what kind of financial setbacks are we talking about? Tom and Sarah exchanged glances. Emma studied her coffee with sudden interest. Jack wandered to the window, pretending to look at the view. The company I was working for was acquired, Tom said finally. The new management brought in their own people. I was let go 3 months ago. 3 months? I raised my eyebrows. And you're just now looking for help? We tried everything else first, Sarah said quickly. Tom's been interviewing, but at his age, he's what, 50? I interrupted. I worked until I was 68. The tech industry is different, Tom said stiffly. They want young talent. I took a slow sip of my coffee. And what about your savings? I assume with your salary you put something away for emergencies. More uncomfortable glances. Catherine sighed dramatically. We had investments, Tom muttered. The market hasn't been kind. Translation. They'd been living beyond their means for years, counting on Tom's next bonus, next promotion, next stock option. And now the house of cards was collapsing. How bad is it? I asked Sarah directly, her eyes filled with tears. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings next week if we can't make a payment. Emma's student loans are in default, and Jack's college tuition is due for his sophomore year. Emma's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Jack continued staring out the window. And what about her? I nodded toward Catherine. Doesn't she have her own place? Mother was going to move into a retirement community. Tom explained, but we had to use that money to cover expenses when I lost my job, so they'd taken Tom's mother's retirement fund. Nice. I wondered if they'd asked or just helped themselves. I see, I said, though what I was seeing wasn't pretty. And exactly how much are you hoping I'll give you? Sarah winced at my bluntness. We're not asking for a handout, Dad. Maybe a loan. Or an investment. Investment in what? Tom doesn't have a job. You haven't worked since Emma was born. What exactly am I investing in? The room went quiet. Even Catherine stopped fidgeting with her expensive watch. We thought, Tom said carefully, with this property, maybe there's room for all of us? We could help you fix it up. Make it a family business of some kind, and there it was. They weren't just asking for money. They wanted my farm, my fresh start, my place to grow old in peace. They wanted to turn it into some sort of family compound where they could live off whatever was left of my savings. I set my mug down with deliberate care. Let me get this straight. You haven't spoken to me in 10 years. Not a phone call, not a Christmas card, nothing. And now you want to move onto my farm and make it a family business? Sarah at least had the decency to look ashamed. I know we've been distant. I laughed, a harsh sound that made Emma flinch. Distant is what happens when you live in different states, but call on birthdays. What you did was abandonment. That's not fair, Tom protested. We were building our lives in California. We invited you to visit, once, I said. 10 years ago. And when I said I couldn't afford the plane ticket, you never mentioned it again. We were busy, Sarah said weakly. The kids had activities. Tom was working 80-hour weeks. Too busy to pick up a phone for 10 years? Too busy to send a picture of my grandkids? Too busy to tell me if Emma graduated high school or what college Jack got into? Emma looked up sharply. You knew I graduated? I called your school, I admitted. Told them I was your grandfather and couldn't make the ceremony but wanted to know when it was. They sent me a program in the mail. I have it somewhere in those boxes. Her eyes widened. You did. I did a lot of things you don't know about, young lady. Sent birthday cards every year until they started coming back marked, Return to Sender. Called every Christmas until your mother changed your number without telling me. Sarah's face went pale. Dad, that's not true. The number I had for you stopped working in 2017. I tried for months to reach you. We upgraded our phones, Tom said. Got new numbers. It wasn't personal. And you didn't think to give me the new one? Didn't think your children's grandfather might want to stay in touch? The silence that followed was damning. Catherine cleared her throat. This is all very dramatic, she said, but it doesn't solve the immediate problem. Thomas and Sarah need financial assistance. You apparently have means. Your family. What are you going to do about it? I looked at this woman, this stranger, who had the audacity to demand I solve problems she and her son had created. I'm going to finish my coffee, I said evenly. And then I'm going to show my grandchildren around the farm. After that we can discuss what helping family actually means. Tom started to protest, but Sarah put a hand on his arm. She recognized the set of my jaw, the same stubborn expression she'd inherited. That sounds fair, she said quietly. Kids, why don't you go with your grandfather? Your father and I need to talk anyway. Emma was already on her feet, eager to escape the tension. Jack followed more slowly, his teenage reluctance warring with curiosity about the farm. I led them out the back door onto a covered porch that ran the length of the house. From there you could see most of the property. The red barn about 100 yards away, the fenced pasture beyond it, the line of oak trees that marked the creek at the property's edge. This is really yours? Emma asked, her voice tinged with something like awe. All 86 acres, I confirmed. From the road to the creek, and from that fence line to the big oak at the corner. What are you going to do with all this space? Jack spoke for the first time, his deep voice startling me. He sounded like a man, not the little boy I remembered. Grow things. Maybe raise some chickens. Keep bees? Bees? Emma looked alarmed. Your grandmother kept bees, I told her. Had the sweetest honey you ever tasted. You loved it on your toast when you visited. I don't remember that, she said softly. You were only 4 the last time you came to stay with us. Can't expect you to remember everything. But I remembered. I remembered how she'd squealed with delight when Margaret let her help collect eggs from the chicken coop behind our old house. How she'd fallen asleep on my chest while I rocked on the porch swing, her small body warm and trusting against mine. How Jack had followed me around the yard asking why. To everything I did, soaking up knowledge like a sponge, I remembered even if they didn't. We walked toward the barn in silence, the morning sun warming our shoulders. When I pushed open the big sliding door, dust motes danced in the shafts of light that streamed through the gaps in the walls. It needs work, I acknowledged, but the structure's sound. Been standing since the 1930s. How do you know that? Jack asked. The dates carved in the center beam. I pointed to the massive wooden beam that ran the length of the barn roof. AJ 1934. Who was AJ? Emma asked. Andrew Jenkins. He built this place during the Depression. Raised 8 children here. Grew tobacco and corn. How do you know so much about him already? Jack sounded skeptical. Because I knew his youngest son, Oscar, used to buy vegetables from him when your mother was little. He told me stories about growing up here. Hard life, but a good one. Jack nodded, looking around with new interest. So this farm has history. Everything has history, son. Just depends on whether you care enough to learn it. We spent the next half hour exploring the barn, the old tool shed and the chicken coop that needed more repair than I had initially realized. Emma asked intelligent questions about gardening. Jack examined the tractor shed with the eye of someone who might actually know something about engines. By the time we circled back to the house, I was breathing hard, my knees aching from the uneven ground. Getting old is hell on the joints. You okay, Grandpa? Emma asked, noticing my limp. Just old, I said. Bad knees from climbing telephone poles for 20 years. Mom never told us what you did for work, she said. Just that you worked for the electric company. Started as a lineman, ended as a manager. Climbed poles in the rain and snow. Fixed transformers during thunderstorms. Brought power back to neighborhoods after hurricanes. That sounds dangerous, Jack said. It was. Lost 2 friends to accidents over the years. Almost got electrocuted myself once when a safety line failed. Who was with you when that happened? Emma asked. I stopped walking. What do you mean? You know when you almost got electrocuted. Who helped you? Mom? Grandma? The question hit me like a punch. She didn't know. Neither of them knew anything about my life, my work, my struggles. Sarah had erased me so completely that my own grandchildren didn't know the first thing about who I was. Your grandmother, I said finally. She was the one who drove me to the hospital after. Sat with me all night while they made sure my heart rhythm was normal. Grandma sounds cool, Jack said. I wish I remembered her better. Me too, kid. Me too. We reached the back porch just as Sarah opened the screen door. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged. Whatever conversation she'd had with Tom hadn't gone well. Everything okay? I asked, more out of habit than concern. Fine, she said tightly. Kids, why don't you go help your father and grandmother bring in their bags from the car? Looks like we'll be staying a few days, if that's all right with you, Dad. I've got 2 bedrooms, I said. You and Tom can take the guest room. Emma can have the couch. Jack and Catherine will need to figure something out. We brought air mattresses, Sarah said. We'll make it work. She waited until the kids were out of earshot before turning to me. Tom's pride is hurt. He's not used to asking for help. Neither am I pointed out. I never asked you for a thing in 10 years, did I? That's different, is it? Because from where I'm standing, I'm the one who was abandoned, and now I'm being asked to rescue the people who walked away. Sarah's eyes flashed with irritation. Nobody abandoned you. You could have visited. You could have made more effort. I made every effort until it became clear I wasn't wanted. The last time I called, Tom told me you were too busy to talk and would call back. That was Christmas 2018. I'm still waiting for that call. She had the grace to look embarrassed. Things got complicated. Life is complicated. Family is supposed to be the one thing you can count on. Is that why you're making this so difficult? She demanded. Some kind of revenge for feeling neglected. The word hit me like a slap. Neglected? Is that what you call 10 years of silence? Neglect is forgetting someone's birthday. What you did was erasure. Dad, no, I held up my hand. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm trying to understand why you're really here. Because it's not just about money, is it? There are easier ways to get cash than driving across the country to see a father you haven't spoken to in a decade. Something shifted in her eyes, a flash of... what, fear? Guilt? We need help, she said carefully. And yes, we need money. But we also thought it might be time to reconnect. After 10 years, why now? Before she could answer, Tom appeared on the porch carrying 2 suitcases. His face was set in the tight expression of a man who'd swallowed something bitter. Got room in the closet for these? He asked, not meeting my eyes. Put them wherever, I said. I haven't unpacked my own stuff yet. He nodded and went inside. Catherine followed, her disapproval radiating like heat from an oven. Emma and Jack came last, each carrying bags and looking uncertain. We're really staying? Emma asked her mother. Sarah forced a smile. For a few days. Grandpa's going to help us figure some things out. I hadn't agreed to that, but I let it pass. The truth would come out soon enough. There was something off about this whole situation. Something beyond financial desperation and family estrangement. That night, after a dinner of pizza ordered from the only place that delivered to rural addresses, I sat on the porch steps, watching fireflies rise from the fields. The same spot where I'd had my coffee that morning, before my peaceful new beginning had been invaded. The screen door creaked behind me. Jack stepped out, his tall frame silhouetted against the kitchen light. Mind if I join you? He asked. Free country, I said, shifting to make room on the step. He sat beside me, gangly teenage limbs folding like a pocket knife. For a while we just watched the darkness deepen over the fields, the fireflies blinking on and off like earthbound stars. Mum and Dad are fighting, he said finally. About what? Money, the house, you. He glanced at me. Mostly you. What about me? Jack shrugged. Dad thinks you're being difficult on purpose. Mom says you have every right to be angry. And what do you think? He considered this, his young face serious in the fading light. I think nobody's telling the whole truth. Not them, not you, smart kid. What makes you say that? The way Mom keeps changing the subject when I ask why we never visited you. The way Dad gets mad whenever your name comes up. The way Grandma Catherine acts like this is all your fault somehow. I nodded slowly. And what about me? What am I hiding? I don't know yet, he said honestly. But there's something sad about the way you look at Mum when she doesn't notice. Like you lost something important and aren't sure how to get it back. The insight startled me. This wasn't the chubby 7-year-old I remembered. This was a young man with observant eyes and a mind that missed little. You're pretty perceptive for a teenager, I said. I want to be a psychologist, he replied. I watch people. Just then, the sound of raised voices drifted through the open upstairs window. Tom and Sarah arguing in the guest bedroom. Their words weren't clear, but the tone was unmistakable. "They do that a lot lately," Jack said quietly. "Ever since Dad lost his job. Money problems strain marriages," I said. "Your grandmother and I had our share of arguments over the years, but you stayed together." "We did. 42 years until cancer took her." Jack nodded. "Mom said Grandma was nice. That she made the best apple pie." "She did." The memory of Margaret's pies, the cinnamon-sweet smell that filled our old house on baking days, made my chest tighten. "She taught your mother to make it, but Sarah never had the patience to get the crust right." "Mom doesn't cook much," Jack said. "We eat out a lot. Or we did before the money ran out," I finished for him. He nodded, embarrassed. "Emma's been learning to cook from YouTube videos. She made spaghetti last week. That wasn't half bad. I stored that information away." Emma could cook. Jack wanted to be a psychologist. Small details about grandchildren who were strangers to me. "Can I ask you something, Grandpa?" "Shoot. Why'd you buy a farm?" "Mom said you lived in a regular house in town." I looked out at the darkened fields, considering how to answer. "I grew up on a farm not far from here. Left when I was 18, swore I'd never go back to rural life. Too much work, too little reward. But lately, I've been thinking about those years more and more. The quiet, the rhythm of seasons, growing things with your own hands." "Sounds lonely," Jack observed. "I've been lonely for 10 years, kid. At least here I've got purpose." The screen door opened again. Sarah stood there, her figure tense. "Jack, it's getting late. You should come in." "We're just talking, Mom." "I know, but—" She hesitated. "Your father wants to discuss something with the family." "All of us," Jack sighed, but stood up. Coming, I remained seated. "This sounds like something for your immediate family." "Actually, Dad," Sarah said, "it concerns you too. Please come inside." Something in her voice, a slight tremor of what might have been fear, made me get to my feet. My knees protested, but I ignored them. The kitchen was bright after the darkness outside. Everyone was gathered around the table. Tom standing at one end, Catherine sitting primly in a chair, Emma perched on a counter stool. Jack took a seat next to his sister. Sarah hovered near Tom, her hands twisting together nervously. "What's this about?" I asked, staying near the door. Tom cleared his throat. "We've been discussing our situation, and we think we've come up with a solution that benefits everyone." "Is that right?" "Yes." He straightened his shoulders. "We'd like to propose a business arrangement." "I'm listening." "This property has significant development potential," he began, slipping into what I recognized as his sales pitch voice. 86 acres near a growing town, good road frontage, water access. With the right investments, it could be parceled into residential lots or developed as a recreational area. I stared at him. "You want to develop my farm? I just bought it yesterday." "Hear me out," Tom insisted. "A partnership. You put up the land, I handle the development and sales. We split the profits. You'd make 10 times what you paid for this place. And where would I live while you're turning my farm into a subdivision?" "We could build you a nice house," Sarah said quickly, "on one of the best lots. Something modern with all the amenities." "I don't want amenities. I want my farm." Tom's expression hardened. "Be reasonable, Hal. This place is too much for a man your age to manage alone. The development would secure your future and solve our financial problems at the same time." "My future is secure," I said evenly. "And your financial problems aren't my responsibility." "We're family," Sarah insisted. "Family helps each other." "Family stays in touch," I countered. "Family calls on birthdays. Family doesn't disappear for 10 years and then show up asking for handouts." Tom slammed his hand on the table. "This isn't a handout. It's a legitimate business proposal. To develop land I bought yesterday. Land you didn't even know I owned until someone told you about it." "Tell me, how did you hear I bought this place?" "Who told you?" Sarah and Tom exchanged glances. Catherine suddenly became very interested in examining her manicure. "Martha called," Sarah said, repeating what she'd told me earlier. "Aunt Judy's friend." "And how did Martha know to call you after 10 years of no contact?" She was concerned about you. Buying a farm at your age." "Martha Jenkins," I said slowly. "Oscar's daughter." "The realtor who sold me this place." Sarah's face went pale. "I didn't know she was the one who—" "You're lying," I said quietly. "Martha didn't call you out of concern. She called you because someone asked her to keep an eye out for an old man with money to spend. Someone who knew I'd received a settlement from the electric company when I retired early." Tom's expression confirmed it, before he could find words to deny it. The slight widening of his eyes, the tightening of his mouth. Who was it, Tom? One of your investment buddies? Someone who specializes in finding vulnerable seniors with assets to strip? That's ridiculous, he sputtered. You're paranoid. This is exactly why we've kept our distance. Your conspiracy theories, your constant suspicion. Shut up, Dad. Emma's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She slid off her stool, hands shaking. Just stop lying. For once in your life, tell the truth. The room went silent. Catherine made a small noise of disapproval, but no one looked at her. Emma, Sarah began. Your father's not... He is lying, Emma insisted. He's been lying for months, about everything. The job, the money, all of it. Tom's face darkened with anger. Young lady, you have no idea what you're talking about. Go to your... He stopped, realizing there was nowhere to send her. Emma turned to me, her young face set in determined lines. Grandpa, Dad didn't lose his job. He was fired for stealing client funds. The company covered it up to avoid scandal, but they pressed charges. He's out on bail right now. The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. What? I looked from Emma to Tom, whose face had gone the color of old paste. You're facing criminal charges? It's a misunderstanding, Tom said weakly. A temporary cash flow issue that got out of hand. My lawyer says we can work it out. He took money from client accounts, Emma continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Almost $1 million. He's been gambling online for years, hiding it from all of us. That's why we're losing the house. That's why we're here. Sarah made a small wounded sound. Jack stared at his father with undisguised horror. You knew, Sarah whispered to her daughter. How long have you known? Since I found the court summons in Dad's desk 3 weeks ago, Emma said. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. You never listen when it's about Dad. I leaned against the wall, feeling suddenly old and tired. So you came here hoping to get my land? To what? Sell it before the authorities freeze your assets? Use my property to pay back what you stole? Tom didn't answer, which was answer enough. Get out, I said quietly. Pack your things and get out of my house. Dad, please, Sarah began. We need time to... No. For the first time, I raised my voice. No more time. No more lies. You didn't come here to reconcile. You came here to use me, just like you've been trying to use me for the past 10 years, taking my money while keeping me at arm's length. That's not true, Sarah insisted, though her eyes told a different story, isn't it? 10 years ago when you moved to California, Tom's company offered to transfer him. They didn't force you to go. You chose to leave, to get away from the father who embarrassed you with his blue-collar job and his country manners. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Sarah. Neither is family, apparently. I turned to Emma and Jack. You two can stay if you want. The offer stands. But your parents and grandmother need to leave tonight. Catherine stood up, her face pinched with indignation. This is outrageous. You can't just throw us out in the middle of nowhere. Watch me, I said. There's a motel 15 miles down the road. I suggest you start driving. Tom finally found his voice. You're making a mistake, Hal. I can turn this property into a gold mine. We can both come out ahead. The only mistake I made was opening my door to you this morning. I pulled my cell phone from my pocket. You've got 30 minutes to pack up and leave, or I'm calling the sheriff to report that a man out on bail for embezzlement is trespassing on my property. I imagine that would violate the terms of your release. The threat landed like a physical blow. Tom grabbed Sarah's arm. Get the bags. We're leaving. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Suitcases dragged downstairs. Hushed, angry conversations behind closed doors. Sarah crying in the bathroom. Through it all, I sat at the kitchen table feeling hollow. Emma and Jack stood awkwardly in the living room, watching their parents' frantic packing with shell-shocked expressions. You two decided what you're doing. I asked them. Jack looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. We'd like to stay, he said. If that's still okay. It is. Mom and Dad won't like it, Emma warned. You're both adults, I said. Or close enough. Your mother gave up her right to make decisions for you when she chose a thief over her own father. Harsh words, but the time for gentleness had passed. When Tom and Sarah came downstairs with their bags, Catherine trailing behind them, they found their children standing beside me in the kitchen. Emma, Jack, let's go, Tom ordered. We're staying. Dad, Emma said quietly. Like hell you are, he snarled. Get in the car, now. No. Jack stepped forward, his lanky frame suddenly imposing. "We're staying with Grandpa for a while." Sarah looked bewildered. But we're your family." "So is he," Emma pointed out. "And he didn't lie to us for years." Tom's face twisted with rage. "This is your doing," he spat at me, "turning my own children against me." "They made their own decision," I said, "based on your actions, not mine. You'll regret this," he threatened. "All of you. When I'm cleared of these ridiculous charges, you'll see what a mistake you've made." "Goodbye, Tom," I said, opening the front door. "Sarah." My daughter looked at me, her face crumpling. "Dad, please, don't do this to us." To me, for a moment, I faltered. She was still my little girl, somewhere beneath the years of Tom's influence. But then I remembered the decade of silence, the birthdays and Christmases alone, the grandchildren I barely knew. "You did this to yourself," I said softly. "You chose him over me 10 years ago." "I'm just honoring your choice." She flinched as if I'd struck her. Then she turned to her children. "This isn't goodbye. We'll figure this out." "Sure, Mom," Emma said, not unkindly. "We'll call you tomorrow." Tom stormed out without another word. Catherine followed, pausing only to give me a look of pure contempt. Sarah lingered a moment longer. Then she, too, disappeared into the night. We stood in the doorway, watching taillights disappear down the long driveway. When the dust settled, I closed the door and turned to my grandchildren, these strangers who had chosen to stay. "Well," I said, suddenly unsure what to do with them. "I guess we've got some catching up to do." Emma smiled, a small, uncertain thing. "I'd like that, Grandpa." Jack nodded in agreement. Outside, a whippoorwill called in the darkness, its lonely sound carrying across fields that belonged to me. And now, in some small way, to them too. That first night with Emma and Jack in the house felt strange, like we were all playing roles in a play nobody had rehearsed. I made up the couch for Emma, with sheets that still smelled of the packaging they'd come in. Jack insisted he was fine on the floor with his air mattress. "I've been camping since I was a kid," he said, unfurling a sleeping bag in the corner of the living room. "This is luxury compared to some places I've slept." I wanted to ask where he'd been camping, with who, what he'd enjoyed about it. All those questions fathers and grandfathers are supposed to know the answers to. But we were strangers, connected by blood and not much else. Morning came with awkward silence around the breakfast table. I'd scrounged up some eggs and bread for toast, but we ate without talking much, the weight of last night's revelations sitting heavy between us. "So," I said finally, setting down my coffee mug, "what happens now?" Emma looked up from picking at her toast. "Dad's probably already called a lawyer to try and get us to come back." "Are you going to?" I asked. She shook her head firmly. "No way. I'm done with his lies." Jack nodded in agreement. "Me too. I've been watching him manipulate Mom for years, making her think everything was her fault when it was him all along, gambling away our money." "How long has the gambling been going on?" I asked. "At least 3 years that I know of," Emma said. "Maybe longer. I found receipts from casinos in his car when I was looking for a phone charger. When I asked him about it, he said it was a client meeting. But then it kept happening. And your mother never suspected." "She didn't want to," Jack said bluntly. "Dad's good at making people see what he wants them to see. Ain't that the truth? 10 years of silence because Sarah had chosen to see me as the problem, not her husband. We need to figure out what to do about your stuff," I said. "Your clothes, your personal things? They're all back at your parents' hotel." Emma bit her lip. "I didn't bring much, just what fit in my suitcase." "Same," Jack said. "Most of my important stuff is in storage at college anyway." College, right. The boy was a sophomore, Emma maybe a senior or graduate. I knew nothing about their lives. "Speaking of college," I ventured. "What are you studying, Jack?" "Psychology," he replied. "Minor in criminal justice. I want to work with troubled kids someday." "And you, Emma? Did you finish school?" She nodded. "Graduated last year. English literature. I was supposed to start a teaching credential program this fall. But," she trailed off, "but the money problems," I finished for her. "Yeah, Dad said he'd pay for it, then suddenly there was no money." That should have been my first clue something was really wrong. We fell silent again. The ticking of the old kitchen clock seemed unnaturally loud. "I should call the sheriff," I said eventually. "Report what Tom told us about the embezzlement charges." "Why?" Jack asked. "The authorities already know. That's why he's out on bail, because now he's trying to use my property to pay off what he stole. That's fraud on top of fraud, Emma's face hardened. Do it. He deserves whatever happens to him. Such anger from someone so young. It made me sad, thinking about what Tom's actions had done to his own children. I made the call after breakfast. Sheriff Dawson was an old-timer I'd known peripherally years ago when I still lived in the area. He listened carefully to what I had to say, then promised to pass the information along to the prosecutors handling Tom's case in California. Sounds like he's violating the terms of his bail, Dawson said, leaving the state without permission, attempting to liquidate assets before sentencing. The California DA will be mighty interested in that. After I hung up, I found Emma and Jack on the back porch looking out at the overgrown fields. What did the sheriff say? Emma asked. That your father's probably in more trouble now than he was before, I told her. Leaving California while on bail isn't going to look good to a judge. Jack sighed. Mom's going to be devastated when they arrest him again. Your mother made her choices, I said, perhaps more harshly than I intended. She chose to believe him over everyone else for years. She loves him, Emma said simply. Even when she shouldn't. The words hit close to home. Wasn't that what I'd done with Sarah? Loved her even when she'd cut me out of her life. Even when she'd chosen Tom over me time and again. Love can make fools of the wisest people, I said finally. The next few days settled into an unexpected rhythm. The kids and I worked on the farm during the day, clearing brush, patching fences, planning a garden. In the evenings we talked. Really talked, filling in the decade of silence with stories and memories. I learned that Emma had her grandmother's talent for growing things, coaxing seedlings from soil with gentle hands. Jack had my mechanical aptitude, figuring out how to fix the ancient tractor I'd inherited with the property. They both loved books, another trait from Margaret's side of the family. Did Mom ever tell you about Grandma? I asked one night as we sat on the porch watching fireflies. Not much, Emma admitted. Just that she died of cancer before we moved to California. She was the best person I ever knew, I told them. Smart as a whip, kind to everyone, and stubborn as a mule when she needed to be. You both have pieces of her in you. I wish we'd known her better, Jack said quietly. Me too, kid. Me too. A week passed with no word from Sarah or Tom. Then 2 weeks. Emma and Jack seemed to relax more each day, laughing more easily, sharing more stories. I found myself looking forward to our meals together, to the sound of young voices in my house again. Then, 3 weeks after they'd left, the sheriff's car came up my driveway again. I was in the barn with Jack, sorting through old tools when Emma called from the house. Grandpa, there's a police car here. My first thought was that Tom had convinced some California cop that I'd kidnapped his children or something equally ridiculous. But when I reached the yard, I saw Sheriff Dawson standing beside a California state trooper. Morning, Hal, Dawson said. This here's Trooper Reynolds from California. He's got some news you and your grandkids might want to hear. We gathered in my kitchen, me, Emma, Jack, and the 2 officers. Reynolds, a serious young man with close-cropped hair, set a folder on the table. Thomas Williams was arrested yesterday in San Francisco, he said without preamble. He attempted to flee the country using a false passport. When authorities apprehended him at the airport, they found nearly $200,000 in cash in his luggage. Emma gasped. Jack's face went pale. What about our mother? He asked. Sarah Williams is cooperating with authorities, Reynolds said. She claims she had no knowledge of her husband's plan to flee, though financial records indicate otherwise. So she's been arrested too? I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. Not yet, but charges are pending. The investigation has uncovered evidence that Mrs. Williams was aware of the embezzlement and helped conceal evidence. Emma started crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Jack put his arm around her shoulders. There's more, Reynolds continued. During the investigation, authorities discovered that Williams had been systematically draining his children's trust accounts, funds set up by their maternal grandmother. My heart stopped. Margaret left trust funds for the kids. Yes, sir. According to the documents we found, Margaret Mitchell established trusts for both grandchildren before her death. The accounts should have contained approximately $100,000 each by now, but they're currently empty. The kitchen seemed to tilt sideways. Margaret had set up trusts without telling me. Tom and Sarah had stolen from their own children. And I'd never known any of it. Can he go to prison for that too? Jack asked, his voice steady despite the shock. Absolutely, Reynolds confirmed. It adds additional charges of wire fraud and theft. Mr. Williams is facing up to 20 years in federal prison. After the officers left, we sat in stunned silence around the kitchen table. The implications were sinking in slowly. Tom hadn't just embezzled from clients. He'd stolen from his own children. And Sarah had helped him, or at least looked the other way. "I can't believe Mom knew," Emma whispered finally. "I thought she was just blind to what Dad was doing, not helping him." "People can surprise you," I said. "Not always in good ways." Jack stood up abruptly. "I need some air." He walked out the back door, letting it slam behind him. Through the window I could see him pacing the yard, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Should I go after him? I asked Emma. She shook her head. "He needs to process. Jack always deals with things alone first. It's how he's wired. You know your brother well. We only had each other," she said simply. "Especially the last few years when Mom and Dad were always fighting about money." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You have me now, too. Both of you." Her fingers tightened around mine. "I know, Grandpa. That's the only good thing that's come out of all this." The next morning, I got a call from a lawyer in San Francisco. Sarah wanted to speak to her children. The lawyer explained that she was cooperating fully with authorities, hoping for leniency. "It's up to them," I told him. "They're adults. I won't tell them what to do." I relayed the message to Emma and Jack over breakfast. They exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations siblings sometimes have. "I don't want to talk to her yet," Emma said finally. "Me neither," Jack agreed. "Maybe later, but not now," I nodded. "That's your right. No one can force you." "What about you, Grandpa?" Emma asked. "Do you want to talk to Mom?" Did I? After 10 years of silence followed by this mess, part of me wanted to confront Sarah, to demand answers about the trust funds, about the lies, about choosing Tom over her own father. But another part, the part that remembered holding her as a baby, teaching her to ride a bike, walking her down the aisle at her wedding, that part just felt sad. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe someday, but not yet." The weeks turned into months. Summer faded into fall, and the farm transformed under our hands. Emma planted a garden that yielded more tomatoes and squash than 3 people could possibly eat. Jack fixed up the chicken coop and brought home a dozen chicks that grew into noisy, productive hens. I found myself looking forward to each day in a way I hadn't in years. Tom's trial made national news. The prosecutor painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning years, not just the client funds, but countless other schemes, including the children's trusts. Sarah testified against him as part of a plea deal, admitting she'd known about the gambling and helped hide evidence from investigators. Emma and Jack watched the news coverage together, sitting close on the couch, drawing strength from each other. I gave them space but stayed nearby in case they needed me. The verdict came down in November. Guilty on all counts. 20 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 15. Sarah got probation and community service in exchange for her testimony. She moved into a small apartment in San Francisco, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She called once a month, leaving voicemails that Emma and Jack eventually started listening to, though they weren't ready to call back. As for me, I found peace in the strangest place, a farm I'd bought on impulse, now filled with the family I'd thought I'd lost forever. On Christmas Eve, 6 months after that first confrontation in my kitchen, we sat around a small tree Jack had cut from the back property. The presents underneath were few but thoughtful. Books, homemade preserves from Emma's garden, a hand-carved walking stick Jack had made for my old knees. "I have something I want to say," I told them as we sipped hot chocolate. This farm was supposed to be my escape, my place to be alone after years of loneliness. But having you two here, it's been the greatest gift of my life. Emma smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "We're the ones who got the gift, Grandpa. You saved us." "We saved each other," Jack corrected. "That's what real family does." The phone rang, interrupting the moment. Emma checked the caller ID and her face went serious. "It's Mom," she said. Jack looked at me, then at his sister. "It's Christmas Eve," Emma nodded. "Maybe it's time." She answered the phone, putting it on speaker. "Hi, Mom." "Emma?" Sarah's voice sounded small and uncertain. I didn't think you'd answer." "It's Christmas," Emma said simply. "Jack's here too." "And Grandpa?" A long pause. I could almost see Sarah trying to find the right words. "Dad?" she said finally. "Are you there?" "I'm here," I replied. "I don't know where to start," she said, her voice breaking. "I've made so many mistakes, hurt so many people, especially you." "Why, Sarah?" Say the question that had haunted me for 10 years. Why did you cut me out of your life? She took a shaky breath. Because Tom convinced me you were controlling, that you wanted to run our lives. And I believed him because it was easier than admitting he was the problem. And the trust funds? I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. Your mother's money for the kids. I'm so ashamed, she whispered. He said it was temporary, that he'd replace it once his investments paid off. I wanted to believe him, so I did. The room fell silent. Emma wiped away tears. Jack stared at the phone like it might bite him. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sarah continued. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you all to know I'm sorry, more sorry than I can ever say. I looked at my grandchildren, these young adults who had shown more courage and integrity than their parents ever had. They'd lost so much, their home, their security, their trust in the people who should have protected them. Yet here they were, rebuilding their lives one day at a time. Sarah, I said slowly, I can't speak for Emma and Jack. They'll make their own decisions about their relationship with you. But for my part, the door isn't closed forever. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a crack in the wall 10 years of silence had built. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. Merry Christmas. After we hung up, the three of us sat in thoughtful silence. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the farm in white. This place that had been meant as my solitary refuge had become something else entirely. A home for 3 generations finding their way back to each other. You know, I said finally, your grandmother used to say something about family. She said it's like a garden. It needs constant tending. You can't just plant it and walk away? Is that why you bought this farm? Emma asked. To remind yourself of Grandma's wisdom, I smiled. Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to grow tomatoes that actually taste like tomatoes. They laughed, and the sound filled the old farmhouse with promise. That night, after Emma and Jack had gone to bed, I sat on the porch despite the cold, looking out at the snow-covered fields. The farm stretched before me, peaceful under its winter blanket. Come spring, we'd plant more vegetables, maybe add some fruit trees. Jack was talking about raising bees, just like his grandmother had done. Life has a funny way of circling back on itself. 10 years without a call from my family, I'd bought a farm to escape the loneliness. Instead, it had become the very thing that brought us back together. Broken, certainly, but healing a little more each day. The greatest wounds and the greatest healing both come from the same place. Family. That's the lesson of my 72 years on this earth. The people who can hurt you most deeply are the ones you love most dearly. But they're also the ones worth fighting for. As I headed inside to my warm bed, I thought about the road ahead. It wouldn't be easy. Sarah had a long way to go to earn back trust. Emma and Jack had years of healing ahead. And me, I had a farm to tend and a family to rebuild, one conversation at a time. Sometimes the greatest blessings arrive in the most unexpected packages. Mine came in the form of a crisis that forced truth into the light after a decade of darkness. Not the retirement I'd planned, but exactly the one I needed. If you've enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life family stories. In the comments below, tell me what you think of this story on a scale from 0 to 10, and share if you've ever experienced a family reconciliation after years of estrangement. Your stories matter too.